The warning lights bathed Ambassador Kelrith's command deck in crimson as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Her 3 ships had traveled for 16 days to reach this remote sector, following the strange distress signal that had appeared on Council sensors 3 weeks ago. It was a simple repeating pattern, mathematical in nature, clearly artificial. After 3,000 years of cataloging every known species in the galaxy, the discovery of a new intelligent civilization was rare enough to demand immediate attention. Kelrith's second in command, a tall Vraxian named Hollis, studied the sensor displays with his 4 eyes narrowed. Ambassador, the signal has stopped, but I'm detecting debris fields ahead. Multiple ships recently destroyed. The ambassador felt her chest tighten. She had served the Galactic Council for 40 years, and in all that time, she had never encountered a situation quite like this. Can you identify the wreckage? Yes, ma'am. They're Kresh Dominion vessels. At least 12 of them, maybe more. The destruction isn't extensive. Kelrith knew the Kresh well. They were an aggressive species, always pushing at the boundaries of Council law. But the Council had learned to manage them through economic pressure and diplomatic isolation. They were bullies, but controllable bullies. And the source of the original signal? Hollis worked his controls and the main view screen shifted to show a planet hanging in the darkness. Even from this distance, Kelrith could see the problem. The planet's surface glowed in patches, the unmistakable signature of recent orbital bombardment. It came from there, the 3rd planet in this system. Long-range scans show the remains of a settlement. Population unknown, but based on the infrastructure, perhaps 10 to 15,000 beings. Kelrith corrected quietly. Nothing survived orbital bombardment. The Kresh had committed genocide, something the Council had spent millennia trying to prevent. Send a priority alert to Council headquarters. Tell them we've found evidence of a preservation protocol violation. The Kresh will answer for this. Before Hollis could respond, every alarm on the bridge began screaming at once. A ship had just appeared on their sensors, massive and moving fast. It hadn't used hyperspace. It had simply been there, hidden somehow, waiting in the darkness. Battle stations, Hollis shouted, but Kelrith raised a hand. Wait, send a greeting on all frequencies. Standard first contact protocols. The communications officer, a young Pelthian, worked frantically. Message sent, Ambassador. No response. The vessel is... It's enormous. 3 times the size of our flagship. I'm detecting weapon systems charging. Send another message. Tell them we represent the Galactic Council. We come in peace. We're here to investigate the destruction of the colony below. Seconds ticked by. The massive ship continued its approach, its hull dark and angular, covered in what looked like armor plating. Its design was unlike anything in Council records, aggressive and brutal where Council ships were elegant and efficient. Then the response came. It wasn't a greeting. It was a data burst, raw and unencrypted, projected on every screen in the fleet. The image showed the colony before its destruction. Buildings reaching toward the sky. Agricultural fields. Playgrounds where small beings played. And then the Kresh ships arriving, their weapons firing without warning, without mercy, until nothing remained but ash and glass. A voice followed, speaking in a language the translation computers struggled to process. When the words finally came through, they were simple and cold. You touched our people. Now you burn. Ambassador, the ship is moving past us. It's heading for the Kresh home system. Hollis's voice was steady, but Kelrith could hear the fear underneath. At its current speed, it will arrive in approximately 6 hours. Kelrith made a decision. Follow it. And get me a direct link to Council command. We need to warn the Kresh. The warning came too late. By the time Kelrith's fleet arrived at the edge of Kresh space, the battle was already over. The human ship, they learned it was called the UNSC Retribution, had entered the system where the Kresh military fleet was stationed. 73 Kresh warships had moved to intercept, confident in their numerical advantage. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. The Retribution hadn't used any tactics the Council would recognize as proper warfare. It didn't hail the fleet. It didn't declare intentions. It didn't offer terms. It simply opened fire with weapons that tore through Kresh shields like they were made of paper. When the Kresh tried to surround it, the human ship accelerated at speeds that should have killed its crew from the force alone. It targeted command ships first, then ships trying to flee, then ships trying to surrender. By the time it was done, the entire Kresh fleet was debris. Not disabled, not damaged, destroyed. and the human ship broadcast a single message to every Kresh world. This is what happens when you murder children. Remember this day. Then it left, vanishing into the darkness as suddenly as it had appeared. Kelrith stood on her bridge, watching the recordings that her sensors had captured. Her hands were shaking. In 3,000 years of Galactic Council history, warfare had become civilized. Ships fought in designated zones. Casualties were minimal. Surrenders were accepted. There were rules, carefully maintained rules that everyone understood. These humans didn't know the rules, or worse, they didn't care. "Ambassador," Hollis said quietly, "I'm receiving a priority message from the Council. They're declaring humanity a rogue species. They're authorizing sanctions and considering a peacekeeping intervention." Kelrith looked at the debris field on her screen, at the shattered remains of 73 warships. She thought about the human vessel, about how it had moved, how it had fought, how it had killed without hesitation or mercy. "Tell the Council to be very careful," she said. "I don't think these humans understand what peacekeeping means. And I'm not sure our fleet understands what these humans are capable of." 3 days later, the Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 600 species gathered to discuss the human problem. They watched the battle recordings. They reviewed the data. They consulted their military advisors, who assured them that while the humans had impressive weapons and ruthless tactics, they were still just one species. The Council represented the combined might of the entire galaxy. The vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would be contacted and told to submit to Council authority. They would be educated in proper galactic civilization. They would learn that violence of this nature was unacceptable in the modern galaxy. Kelrith voted against the measure. She was the only one. As the Council began preparing its response, as fleets were organized and diplomats drafted their speeches, Kelrith returned to her quarters. She pulled up everything her sensors had recorded about the human ship. She analyzed its movements, its weapons, its tactics, and she realized something that filled her with cold dread. The humans had been efficient, yes. Brutal, yes, but not desperate. Not struggling. They had destroyed the Kresh fleet the way a predator kills prey, with casual, terrifying competence. The retribution wasn't humanity's greatest weapon. It was their warning shot, and the Galactic Council, in its wisdom and pride, was about to ignore that warning. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UNSC Retribution, watching the tactical display with cold, calculating eyes. Around her, the bridge crew worked in efficient silence, monitoring systems and tracking targets. They had been hunting for 2 weeks now, and the prey was getting nervous. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Park said from communications. "Same as before. They're ordering us to stand down and submit to Council mediation." Sarah didn't look up from her display. Delete it. The Kresh Dominion had learned too slowly that they had made a terrible mistake. After the destruction of their main fleet, they had scattered their remaining forces across their territory, hoping that dispersal would protect them. It hadn't. The Retribution had hunted them methodically, one outpost at a time, one supply depot at a time, one ship at a time. But the Retribution wasn't alone anymore. 3 more human warships had arrived from Sol System, and they had brought a doctrine of warfare that the galaxy had forgotten existed. Commander Jackson, aboard the UNSC Silent Running, specialized in something the humans called stealth operations. His ship could disappear from sensors completely, moving through space like a ghost, striking without warning. The results were devastating. Kresh supply convoys would simply vanish. Outposts would go dark. And then, in a touch that Sarah knew was psychological warfare at its finest, the human ships would return the personal effects of captured Kresh officers to their families. Uniforms carefully cleaned, personal items undamaged, and a simple note: "Your commander surrendered. They are alive. They are prisoners. They will face trial." The message was clear. Humanity didn't kill unnecessarily, but they would kill when needed. The Kresh were learning to fear the difference. "Captain, Ambassador Kelrith is requesting communication again," Park said. "She's quite persistent," Sarah sighed. The Council ambassador had been trying to establish dialogue for days. "Put her through." The view screen flickered and Ambassador Kelrith's face appeared. She looked tired, her features drawn.
"Captain Chen, please."
"You must listen to reason. The Council can mediate this conflict. There are proper channels for grievances, proper ways to seek justice. Justice. Sarah repeated, her voice flat. Ambassador, your council has been aware of Kresh aggression for how long? Decades? Centuries? And what did you do? You applied economic pressure. You issued diplomatic complaints. You managed them. She leaned forward. They murdered 15,000 colonists. Men, women, children. They burned our colony from orbit without warning, without provocation, without mercy. And your council's response was to file a report. Kelrith's expression showed pain. I understand your anger, but what you're doing violates every principle of modern warfare. There are rules, protocols that have kept the galaxy peaceful for 3,000 years. Your rules don't apply to us because we never agreed to them, Sarah said. And frankly, Ambassador, your rules are designed for species that fight wars for sport, for politics, for territorial disputes. We fight wars to win. We fight wars to make sure they never happen again. Learn the difference. You can't simply ignore galactic law. Watch us. Sarah gestured and the screen switched to a tactical overview. Do you see this, Ambassador? These are Kresh military installations. 3 of them went offline in the last 4 hours. No shots fired. No battles. They simply surrendered the moment our ships appeared. Do you know why? Kelrith stared at the display, her face pale. Because the Kresh military has learned something your council hasn't. When humans come for you, resistance means death. Surrender means prison and trial. It's a simple choice, and they're smart enough to take it. Your council keeps talking about rules and protocols. We're showing the Kresh something more fundamental. Consequences. The ambassador's voice was quiet. The council is preparing to intervene. They cannot allow this to continue. Then tell the council to stay out of our way, Sarah said, and ended the transmission. Across Kresh space, the systematic dismantling of their military continued. Commander Jackson's silent running appeared in orbit over a Kresh fortress world, broadcasted every war crime the Kresh government had committed over the past century, complete with evidence, and then vanished before their defense fleet could respond. The civilian population rioted within hours. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the UNSC Vengeance, used different tactics. His ship engaged Kresh fleets in what appeared to be conventional battles, then retreated. The Kresh would pursue, confident in their numbers, only to find themselves led into carefully prepared ambushes where human weapons platforms had been waiting in the darkness for days. The Galactic Council watched in growing horror. This wasn't how civilized species fought. Where were the formal declarations? Where were the honor duels between champions? Where were the negotiated battle zones and the neutral observers? The humans ignored all of it. They fought like their ancient ancestors had fought on Earth, using every advantage, every trick, every psychological weapon they could devise. And it was working. 6 weeks after the destruction of their main fleet, the Kresh Dominion sued for peace. The human terms were delivered by Admiral Webb himself, commander of the Human Expeditionary Force. He broadcasted them on every frequency to every species in the sector. The Kresh Dominion will surrender all military vessels immediately. They will disarm completely and submit to a century of council oversight. Every officer involved in the attack on Proxima Colony will be handed over to human custody for trial. The Kresh will pay reparations to the families of the victims, the full amount to be determined by human courts, and the Kresh government will issue a formal apology to humanity, to be recorded and distributed across the galaxy. The terms were harsh, brutal even. The Galactic Council immediately protested. Ambassador Kelrith herself reached out to Admiral Webb, trying to negotiate more reasonable conditions. Webb's response was simple and final. No. Admiral, please, Kelrith said, her voice desperate. These terms will cripple the Kresh for generations. There must be room for compromise. There is no compromise when you murder children, Webb replied. The Kresh made their choice. Now they live with the consequences. An ambassador. If the council tries to interfere with our justice, if you try to negotiate lighter terms or shield the Kresh from accountability, you will be choosing a side. Choose carefully. The threat was clear. The council could accept human terms or join the Kresh as enemies. Kelrith reported back to the council leadership, and they faced a truth they had never encountered before. They were not in control of this situation. They could not dictate terms. They could not manage or contain these humans. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Council was irrelevant. The Kresh accepted every term. They had no choice. Their military was destroyed, their economy was in ruins, and their population was terrified. Human ships watched from orbit as Kresh officers were loaded onto transport vessels, as weapons were dismantled. As the apology was recorded and broadcast, Sarah Chen watched it all from the Retribution's command deck. She felt no joy, no triumph, only a cold satisfaction that justice, real justice, had been served. "Captain," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "we're receiving intelligence from Earth. The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. They're discussing humanity." "Let them discuss," Sarah said. "We're not finished yet, because the Kresh were just the beginning." Humanity had learned that the galaxy was full of species like them, aggressive powers that the Council managed rather than stopped. And humanity had just shown the galaxy a different way. Now every oppressed species, every victim of Kresh aggression, every minor power that had suffered under their attacks, was watching and hoping. The humans had done in weeks what the Council couldn't do in centuries. They had stopped a genocidal power completely and absolutely. The galaxy would never be the same. The Council chamber on Galactic Central was the largest gathering place in known space, a massive sphere where representatives from 600 species could meet in person. Today, every seat was filled. The holographic displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and damage assessments from the Kresh conflict. The mood was tense, fearful, and above all, angry. High Chancellor Vorn, a Helixian who had held his position for 2 centuries, called the emergency session to order. His voice echoed through the chamber, translated into 600 languages simultaneously. "We face an unprecedented crisis. A new species has entered galactic space and rejected every foundation of our civilization. They refuse Council authority. They wage war without restraint. They must be contained." Ambassador Kelrith stood from her seat in the diplomatic section. "High Chancellor, I must object. The humans were responding to genocide. The Kresh violated the most fundamental Council law. Perhaps if we acknowledge this and work with humanity instead of against them—" "The manner of their response is the issue," Vorn interrupted. "Yes, the Kresh committed atrocities. Yes, they will be punished under Council law. But humanity's actions have destabilized an entire sector. Their methods are barbaric. Their refusal to accept mediation is unacceptable." Representative Thane, a military commander from the Vraxian Armada, stood next. "The humans possess dangerous capabilities. Their weapons technology exceeds ours in key areas. Their tactical doctrine is completely alien to our understanding. If we allow them to continue unchecked, they will upset the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia." Another representative spoke up, then another. The consensus was building, fed by fear and wounded pride. The Galactic Council had maintained order for 3,000 years. They were the authority in this galaxy, and these upstart humans, barely capable of interstellar travel, had ignored them completely. Kelrith tried again. "I have studied the humans extensively. They are not expansionist. They seek only to protect their people. If we offer them membership in the Council, if we work with them rather than against them, we can avoid catastrophe." "They must learn their place first," Vorn said coldly. "I am invoking the Preservation Act." The chamber fell silent. The Preservation Act had not been used in over 2,000 years. It was the Council's ultimate authority, the legal framework that allowed them to quarantine dangerous species for the good of the galaxy. It required a 2/3 majority vote and the commitment of significant military resources. "The human home system, designated Sol, will be blockaded," Vorn continued. "All human vessels outside their territory will be detained. Humanity will be given one opportunity to submit to Council authority and accept our guidance. If they refuse, they will be isolated until such time as they develop the maturity necessary for galactic civilization." The vote was called. Kelrith voted against it. So did a handful of other representatives who understood the danger, but they were vastly outnumbered. The Preservation Act passed with 82% support. Within days, the largest military fleet in modern galactic history began assembling at the edge of human space. 47 species contributed ships. Over 4,000 vessels gathered from massive dreadnoughts to support craft. It was a show of force that had never been equaled. A demonstration of the Council's power that would surely convince even the stubborn humans to see reason. Admiral Marcus Webb received the Council's ultimatum aboard the UNSC Thermopylae, humanity's flagship positioned in Earth orbit. He was an old man by military standards, 63 years old, with gray hair and scars from a dozen conflicts. He had fought in the Martian Independence War, commanded fleets during the Outer Colony rebellions, and now faced the greatest challenge of his career. The ultimatum was clear: surrender to Council authority or face isolation. The Council fleet would establish a blockade around Sol system. No human ships would leave. No trade would be permitted. Humanity would be cut off until they learned to behave. Webb read the message twice, then called his command staff together. Gentlemen, ladies, the Council has made their move. They think they can intimidate us. They think their numbers will make us bend. Sir, their fleet is enormous, Captain Chen said. She had brought the Retribution back to Earth specifically for this confrontation. 4,000 ships against our home fleet of 300. 300 they can see, Webb corrected with a cold smile. Did they really think we'd leave Earth undefended? Did they really think we wouldn't plan for first contact going badly? He pulled up a tactical display and the officers leaned forward. The display showed the Council fleet at the edge of the Sol system, confident and organized. But it also showed something else. Dozens of human vessels in dark space powered down completely, invisible to normal sensors. They surrounded the Council fleet like wolves around sheep. We've been preparing for hostile first contact for over a century, Webb continued. Every war game, every simulation, every strategic planning session included the possibility that we'd meet someone bigger and meaner than us. And do you know what every single simulation taught us? No one answered. They knew the Admiral's teaching style: never fight fair, never give the enemy what they expect, and never ever let them see everything you have until it's too late. He looked around the room at his officers. The Council is about to learn something about humanity. We're really good at war, and we've had a long time to think about how to fight species more advanced than us. The Admiral composed his response to the Council ultimatum. It was 2 words in ancient Greek: Molon lab, come and take them. The Council commanders were confused by the response. Their translation systems struggled with the Dead Earth language. By the time they understood the defiance, it was too late. The Council fleet moved into position around the Sol system, their ships spreading out in a standard blockade formation. They were orderly by the book, following tactics that had worked for thousands of years. They expected the human home fleet to either surrender or engage in a defensive battle near Earth. Instead, every human ship in the system went dark. Sensors showed nothing. The Council fleet found themselves staring at an apparently empty system. Where did they go? Council Fleet Commander Zalus demanded on his flagship. Ships don't just disappear. His sensor officer checked and rechecked the displays. I don't know, Commander. All human vessels have gone silent. No energy signatures, no movement, nothing. Keep scanning. They have to be here somewhere. They were here. All around them. Admiral Webb had positioned his forces days ago, using a tactic borrowed from ancient submarine warfare. The human ships sat in deep space, running on minimal power. Their advanced stealth systems making them invisible. They had let the Council fleet walk into a trap. All ships, Webb transmitted on encrypted channels. Execute Operation Thermopylae. 300 human warships came online simultaneously. They appeared on Council sensors from every direction, inside their formation, cutting their fleet into isolated groups. Before the Council ships could react, the humans opened fire. The Battle of Sol lasted 4 hours. The Council ships, designed for formal engagements and honor duels, found themselves fighting an enemy that used every dirty trick in the book. Human ships targeted engines first, crippling Council vessels without destroying them. They used electronic warfare to jam communications, isolating commanders from their fleets. They hit supply ships and command vessels, creating chaos and panic. And when Council ships tried to surrender, the humans accepted immediately, pulling them out of the battle and designating them neutral. It was psychologically devastating. Why fight when surrender meant safety? The Council fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming in numbers, fell apart. Ships broke formation. Commanders lost control. Entire battle groups surrendered rather than face destruction. By the end of 4 hours, 60% of the Council fleet was either destroyed or captured. The survivors fled, jumping to hyperspace in panic, abandoning their wounded and their mission. Admiral Webb watched them go from the Thermopylae's bridge. Send a message to the Council. Full broadcast, all frequencies. The communications officer nodded. Ready, sir. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Nations Space Command. Today, the Galactic Council attempted to blockade our home system. They failed. We have defeated the largest fleet in galactic history, with minimal casualties to our own forces. We did not start this war. We did not want this war, but we will finish it if necessary. He paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. Humanity offers the Council one chance. Leave us alone. Let us live in peace. Allow us to govern ourselves. Do this and we will not pursue your fleets. We will not strike your worlds. We will leave you in peace. His voice hardened. But if you choose to continue this conflict, understand what that means. The next human fleet will not stop at your borders. We will not accept half measures or negotiations. We will end this threat completely and permanently. The message ended. Across the galaxy, 600 species received it and understood. The humans were not bluffing. They had just destroyed the Council's finest fleet with contemptuous ease. What could they do if truly angered? Kelrith watched the battle recordings in her quarters, her hands shaking. She had warned them. She had begged them to reconsider. The defeat at Sol sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. High Chancellor Vorn, his authority crumbling, made a desperate decision. He invoked the Mutual Defense Protocols, ancient treaties that bound Council members to defend each other against external threats. Within weeks, 12 major galactic powers committed their reserve fleets to the war effort. The Helixian Empire, the Vraxian Armada, the Pelthian Starguard, and 9 others. Combined, they represented military might accumulated over millions of years of civilization. Surely, Vorn reasoned, this would be enough. The humans had been lucky at Sul, catching the Council fleet off guard. But now the galaxy would show these primitives what real power looked like. They still didn't understand what they were fighting. The Council's strategy was traditional. Mass the fleets, establish supply lines, move toward human space in an organized advance, and crush Earth's defenses through overwhelming force. It was how wars had been fought for 3,000 years. Organized, predictable, manageable. Humanity fought differently. 3 weeks after the Council declared war, the Helixian Empire's main military shipyard simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. Human ships had somehow infiltrated the heavily defended system, loaded the entire facility with explosives, evacuated all workers through hijacked transports, and then jumped away. The shipyard exploded 4 hours later, taking 10 years of military production with it. The Council was confused. Why evacuate the workers? Why give warning? This wasn't total warfare. Admiral Webb answered their confusion through a public broadcast. We are not monsters. We don't kill unnecessarily. But make no mistake, we will destroy everything you use to wage war against us. Your soldiers can surrender and live. Your workers can evacuate and survive. But your machines, your ships, your weapons, those are legitimate targets always. The message was clear. Humanity would cripple the Council's ability to fight, but would minimize casualties where possible. It was a strategy that confused the Council leadership, but terrified their civilian populations. The humans could strike anywhere at any time, and you might survive if you didn't resist. Commander Jackson's silent running proved especially effective. His ship appeared in orbit over the Vraxian homeworld, broadcast every corrupt practice their military leadership had engaged in over the past decade, complete with financial records and communications, and vanished before their defense fleet could respond. The Vraxian government fell within a week, replaced by reformers who questioned the war. Captain Rodriguez took a different approach. The UNSC Vengeance specialized in striking supply convoys. Council fleets needed food, fuel, ammunition, replacement parts. Rodriguez ensured they got none of it. His ship hunted transports with ruthless efficiency, forcing crews to abandon ship before destroying the vessels. Within 2 months, Council battle groups were running on empty, unable to advance or even maintain position. But it was Captain Chen aboard the Retribution who truly demonstrated the human way of war. Her ship arrived at a major Council fleet assembly point, outnumbered 50 to 1. Instead of engaging, she broadcast a simple message. In 60 seconds, this entire facility will be destroyed. All ships wishing to survive should jump immediately. The Council commander, certain it was a bluff, ordered his fleet to attack. Chen waited exactly 60 seconds, then jumped away. 10 minutes later, antimatter mines the humans had seeded throughout the system months earlier detonated simultaneously. The assembly point ceased to exist. The Council had been outplayed at every level. While they planned grand battles, humans hit infrastructure. While they massed fleets, humans struck communications hubs. While they followed doctrine, humans rewrote the rules. And worse, humanity was winning the political war. Human ships broadcasted council secrets to their member populations. They revealed how the council leadership lived in luxury while their people suffered. They made deals with oppressed client species, offering technology and support in exchange for information. They turned the galaxy's political structure into a weapon. The Pelthian Star Guard was the first major power to request negotiations. Their economy was collapsing, their supply lines were cut, and their population was rioting. Captain Sarah Chen met with their commander on neutral ground. "How?" the Pelthian admiral asked, his voice hollow. "How can you be everywhere at once? How can you strike us before we even plan our movements? How can you know our secrets?" "We fight total war," Sarah explained. "You fight battles. We fight wars. Every human ship is gathering intelligence. Every engagement teaches us about your capabilities. Every prisoner we take tells us about your culture, your politics, your weaknesses. And we share all that information instantly across our entire fleet. You're not fighting 300 ships. You're fighting a single unified intelligence that learns and adapts with every encounter. This isn't civilized warfare." "No," Sarah agreed. "It isn't. Civilized warfare is what you have when both sides agree to fight politely, when there are rules everyone follows because breaking them would be unsporting. We never agreed to your rules. We're fighting to win, to protect our people and to make sure this never happens again. If you want civilized warfare, you need to stop trying to conquer us." The Pelthians withdrew from the conflict within a week. 3 other powers followed within a month. The Council's Grand Alliance was fracturing. High Chancellor Vorn, desperate and furious, made a catastrophic decision. If conventional warfare wouldn't work, the Council would target human civilians. He authorized strikes on human colonies, reasoning that Earth would surely surrender rather than watch their settlements burn. The authorization reached human intelligence within hours. Every Council communication was compromised, every secret exposed. And humanity's response was immediate and brutal. Admiral Webb assembled every available human warship, over 400 vessels, and jumped directly to the Helixian homeworld, where the Council leadership was meeting. The fleet appeared in orbit without warning, their weapons armed and locked on every major city. Webb's message was broadcast across the galaxy. "You want to target civilians? Here we are. Here are your civilians. Here are your homes, your families, your children. Fire one shot at our colonies and we turn your capital city to glass. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The Council leadership stared at the human fleet above their heads and understood finally what they were facing. These humans would not surrender. They would not negotiate from weakness, and they would absolutely follow through on their promises. Vorn rescinded the order. The Council meeting dissolved in chaos as member species turned on each other, blaming everyone but themselves for the disaster. Ambassador Kelrith, watching her civilization tear itself apart, made a decision that would cost her everything. She sent a secret message to Admiral Webb requesting a meeting. She arrived alone on an unarmed shuttle, at coordinates he provided. Webb met her in the Thermopylae's observation deck, Earth hanging in the viewport behind him. The old admiral looked tired but determined. "Ambassador," he greeted her simply. "Admiral Webb, I come without authorization from the Council. What I'm about to do will be considered treason by many." She straightened her shoulders. "I want to negotiate an end to this war. The Council can end this any time they want. They just need to leave us alone. The Council is collapsing. Member species are in revolt. Our economy is failing. Our alliances are broken." Her voice cracked slightly. "You're destroying us without ever attacking our core worlds. I've never seen anything like it." "It's called strategic warfare," Webb said quietly. "We don't need to invade your worlds. We just need to make continuing the war more costly than accepting peace." Kelrith looked at him with something like horror. "What do you want from us? What will it take to end this?" Webb's answer was everything she feared. "We want you to remember what you let happen to our colony. We want the galaxy to know that humanity protects its own, and we want every species out there to understand that if you come for us, we don't negotiate. We don't forgive. We end you. That's total war. That's genocide-level thinking." "No," Webb corrected. "Genocide is what the Kresh did. What we're doing is making sure it never happens again. We're teaching the galaxy a lesson it forgot. Actions have consequences. Real consequences. Kelrith was silent for a long moment, staring at Earth below. You've awakened something terrible in this galaxy. Before you came, war was controlled, limited. Now species will think twice before committing atrocities. Webb finished. That's not terrible, Ambassador. That's justice. The meeting ended with Kelrith understanding something fundamental. The Galactic Council had created a paradise for themselves by forgetting how to fight real wars. They had become soft, complacent, certain of their superiority. And humanity had just reminded them what real predators looked like. The war continued for another 6 months, but the outcome was inevitable. One by one, Council members withdrew. Supply lines collapsed completely. The unified fleet fell apart. And through it all, human ships continued their relentless campaign. Not of destruction, but of dismantlement. They didn't want to destroy the galaxy. They just wanted to remake it. And they were succeeding. 18 months after first contact, the war ended not with a grand battle, but with exhaustion and acceptance. The Galactic Council, its fleet scattered, its economy shattered, its member species in open revolt, finally sued for peace. High Chancellor Vorn had been removed from office, replaced by a coalition government that understood the reality of their situation. They had lost completely and utterly to a species they had dismissed as primitive. The peace conference was held on a neutral station at the edge of Council space. Ambassador Kelrith attended, representing what remained of Council authority. She had been pardoned for her unauthorized negotiations, and many credited her with preventing even greater catastrophe. Across from her sat Admiral Webb and Captain Sarah Chen, representing humanity. The human terms were not negotiable. Webb presented them clearly and without emotion. First, the Galactic Council will be reformed. No more lifetime appointments. No more decision-making by ancient bureaucrats who have forgotten what accountability means. Term limits, regular elections, and most importantly, transparency. Every council decision will be public record. Kelrith nodded slowly. Half the council members had already resigned in disgrace when human intelligence released their corruption files to the public. Second, species who engage in genocide, unprovoked warfare, or systematic atrocities will face immediate intervention. Not economic pressure. Not diplomatic complaints. Real consequences. The galaxy will form a proper peacekeeping force with the authority to actually keep peace. Who will control this force? Kelrith asked. A coalition. Multiple species. But humanity will have veto power over its deployment. Webb's expression was hard. We will not allow another Proxima situation, because the Council was too weak to act. The third term was expected. Human colonies and territories will be granted sovereign status. We govern ourselves. We defend ourselves. We answer to no one. We'll cooperate with the new council, but we will never submit to its authority. And your military? Kelrith asked, though she knew the answer. We keep it. All of it, every ship, every weapon, every soldier. And we will maintain the right to build more as we see fit. Chen spoke up for the first time. The galaxy spent 3,000 years proving it can't be trusted to protect the innocent. We'll protect ourselves. The final terms covered reparations, prisoner exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. The Council would help rebuild what the war had destroyed. Human prisoners would be returned with full honors, and humanity would commit to defending Council space against external threats, but only threats they deemed legitimate. It was a dictated peace, the kind imposed by victors on the defeated. The Council had no choice but to accept every term. The treaty was signed 3 days later. As Council representatives filed out, Kelrith remained behind, sitting across from Captain Chen in the empty conference room. I need to understand something, Kelrith said quietly. Every species in the galaxy evolved past total warfare. We grew beyond it. We became civilized. How can you be so advanced technologically yet so brutal in your approach to conflict? Sarah was silent for a moment, choosing her words carefully. You want to know what makes humans different? Yes, please. You had 3,000 years of peace, not because you evolved past violence, Ambassador. You had peace because you forgot what real predators look like. You played at war like children play with wooden swords. All pageantry, no pain. Safe battles in designated zones with neutral observers and negotiated casualty limits. Sarah leaned forward. We never forgot. We come from Earth, a world where everything wanted to kill us. We fought each other for 10,000 years before we reached the stars. We learned warfare when wars actually mattered, when losing meant extinction. That sounds like hell. It was. It made us what we are. Sarah's expression softened slightly. When you pressed the button marked war, you expected the game you were used to. Safe, controlled, reversible. You got us instead, and we don't know how to fight your kind of war. We only know the real kind. Kelrith absorbed this in silence. Then she asked the question that had haunted her since that first day at Proxima. What happens now? What will humanity do with this power? We'll do what we've always done. We'll survive. We'll protect our own. We'll explore, build, create. Sarah stood, preparing to leave. And if someone threatens us again, we'll remind them why that's a bad idea. The galaxy wanted to meet us, Ambassador. Now you have. Learn from it. 20 years passed. The galaxy transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was fundamentally different. Elections were held. Corrupt leaders were removed. Species that had been oppressed for centuries found their voices heard for the first time. The Council, humbled and reformed, actually began doing its job. Wars became rarer, not because species were more enlightened, but because everyone remembered what happened when the humans were provoked. The phrase, "don't make it a human problem," entered galactic vocabulary, a warning against pushing conflicts too far. Human colonies spread across hundreds of worlds. The UNSC maintained a fleet that dwarfed most galactic militaries, but it was rarely needed. The deterrent value of humanity's reputation proved more effective than any weapon. Ambassador Kelrith, now teaching history at the Galactic University, watched her students study what they called the awakening with mixed emotions. She had lived through it, seen the destruction and the fear, but she had also seen the change it brought. "Professor," a young student asked during a lecture on human military doctrine, "why didn't the Council just leave humanity alone from the beginning?" Kelrith smiled sadly. "Because we were arrogant. We had maintained peace for so long we forgot what it cost. We thought our way was the only way, that our rules were universal laws. We needed someone to remind us that the universe doesn't care about our rules." Are humans still dangerous? Yes, humans are still the most dangerous military power in the galaxy. Kelrith pulled up an image of a human fleet on her display. But dangerous and evil are not the same thing. Humans are dangerous the way a guard dog is dangerous. Leave them alone and they're friendly, even helpful. But threaten what they protect and they become your worst nightmare. In human space, Captain Sarah Chen, now an admiral herself, gave a speech to new graduates of the Naval Academy. She stood before hundreds of young officers who would carry humanity's reputation forward. "You are about to join the UNSC at a unique moment in our history," she told them. "We are no longer the unknown species fighting for recognition. We are the species that change the galaxy. Some call us heroes, some call us monsters. The truth is we're neither. We're humans, and that's enough. The galaxy has learned something from us whether they wanted to or not. They learned that there are still species out here who remember how to fight real wars. They learned that genocide has consequences. They learned that when you push humans, we push back harder." She paused. "But they also learned that we can be trusted, that we keep our word, that we fight for the weak and not just ourselves. Your job is to maintain that balance. Be ready for war always, but work for peace whenever possible. Show the galaxy that humanity is not just dangerous but honorable, not just powerful but just make them remember that we didn't start this conflict. But we did end it on our terms." The cadets saluted, and Sarah saw in their eyes the same determination she had felt on the Retribution all those years ago. The galaxy had tested humanity and learned a hard lesson. These young officers would ensure that lesson was never forgotten. Admiral Webb, retired now and living on Mars, gave interviews to historians documenting the war. One question came up repeatedly. "Do you regret how aggressive humanity's response was?" His answer never changed. "I regret that the Kresh murdered 15,000 colonists. I regret that the Council tried to intimidate us instead of working with us. I regret every life lost in the war that followed. But do I regret showing the galaxy that humanity cannot be pushed around, that atrocities will be answered, that we protect our own? No, never. Some say humanity made the galaxy a more violent place." Webb shook his head. The galaxy was already violent. It was just polite about it. The Kresh weren't the only ones committing atrocities. They were just the ones who made the mistake of targeting us. We didn't make the galaxy more violent. We made it more honest. And we made predators think twice before attacking the weak. In the end, the galaxy's perception of humanity settled into something complex and contradictory. Humans were known as fierce warriors who would rather negotiate than fight. They were technological innovators who shared freely with allies. They were unforgiving to enemies but generous to friends. They were the species that had ended the longest peace in galactic history, and the species that had created a better, more just peace to replace it. The Battle of Saul was studied in every military academy. The Kresh conflict became a case study in asymmetric warfare. Human diplomatic methods were analyzed in political science courses, and children across the galaxy grew up with stories of the humans, the species from the Deathworld that taught the galaxy what strength really meant. Ambassador Kelrith, in her final lecture before retirement, summed it up best. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not their technology or their tactics,